Hello. Welcome to another Healthy Minds live streaming session. Glad to have you with me. If you don't know, Healthy Minds Innovations is a nonprofit dedicated to translating the latest science of emotion and well-being and meditation into practical tools. And I am here to tell you that this is going to be our last live meditation in this series, which is a bit of a mixed emotional bag for me. We started this at the beginning of the pandemic. And actually, just recently, as I heard that this was going to be the last session, I looked through the YouTube channel, and in all the little thumbnails, you can kind of see I can see that I'm wearing sweaters in the winter, and I'm sort of going back in time and seeing like these chapters of my own life just through the thumbnails. And then I saw that the first set were actually, I wasn't here in my home office. I was at my brother's house because when the pandemic first hit, there was all this confusion. We didn't know what was really happening. And I remember my wife and I, we weren't sure about being in the city because the city might have been tricky. So we escaped to crash at my brother's place. And I could see that all in the thumbnails of these videos. So it's been quite the little journey. Just as we get started here, I want to invite you to share in the chat if this is your first session, just a little bit about where you are, where you're from. If you've been to a number of them, just how you're feeling, knowing that this is going to be the last session in the series. That includes all the live sessions we're doing with myself, with Stephanie and Richie and Cord and the crew as well. But the good news is, one of the reasons we're doing this is that our community is growing, and we're going to be focusing on live events that are going to be punctuated. We have some really exciting things planned. So we're not going away. There's some exciting things planned over the next couple of months, and even starting to talk about things into next year. And right now on our radar is October 13th, we're having a Healthy Minds Masterclass Founders Edition with Dr. Richard Davidson and Dr. Cortland Dahl, the creators of the Healthy Minds Framework. It's going to be a multi-week session. There's going to be special guests, including me and Stephanie and some others, to lead meditations. So we hope you'll join us there. And I thought, in terms of our practice today, two things came up for me. One is I thought we'd do a little bit of a longer practice. So we're going to do a 20-minute practice today. And the other thing is I thought we would focus on endings, right? This being the ending of this particular series. It seemed like a reasonable place to focus our practice because, in particular, focusing on endings in terms of an awareness practice has been also a great source of insight for me. So it's one of those practices where the mechanics of the practice are really kind of in an awareness mode in terms of the Healthy Minds framework, but there's also a lot of insight to be gleaned here as well. Good to see you here, David, Jess, Lola, Jose. Welcome. Take this opportunity to get comfortable, find a position that feels right for you, something upright yet relaxed. And as always, this is your meditation. So everything I say is a suggestion. You can feel free to adapt as you need. If you have momentum with some other practice and just want to share this space of community, feel free to do that. If you're new to this kind of thing and you just want to listen in, please, by all means, just relax and listen and get a sense of what we're doing here. And we are going to engage in the meditation practice now. We're going to go for 20 minutes. So that's going to take us to 24 past the hour. Take a deep breath if that helps you relax, and you can close your eyes now if that's something that feels safe and comfortable for you. And sometimes what I like to do is take a big deep breath in, and then on the exhale, let go of any tension in my jaw, in my shoulders, in my hips. Maybe another deep breath in. And then noticing that contact with the ground. Noticing that feeling of gravity as a kind of calibration of my mind as I settle into the practice. And I always like to leave a little space here just to see where I'm at. So take this opportunity, no need to rush into anything, just to notice where you're at today. It's funny how we can go through a whole day or a whole morning without ever just stopping to say, where am I at? How am I feeling today? So I'll invite you to do that now, to just notice, how's your body feeling? What's the quality of your state of mind? Whatever comes up is okay. And if the simplicity of this feels right for you, I'd encourage you to continue doing this for the full practice period, just noticing where you're at, not putting too much effort into anything, letting it all happen with a sense of awareness, openness, curiosity, maybe even a bit of fun. If you'd like to take a little bit more of a structured approach to developing the skill of awareness, what I'll invite you now to do is to pay attention to the domain of sound, noticing anything you might be hearing in your external environment, and paying particular interest to endings. So that moment where a sound stops, especially if you notice any sounds stopping abruptly. So, for example, even these words I'm saying right now, in a few seconds, this flow of sound that's coming from me is going to stop abruptly. So, what we're doing here is we're practicing awareness with sound in general, but we're taking note of any moments where we hear a sound abruptly vanish from our experience. If this feels challenging to you, or you notice your mind is being pulled away into thoughts or other experiences are pulling you away, see if you can just let that happen. There's no need to get hard on yourself. Simply, whenever you notice, acknowledging what's happened and return to the practice of noticing sound, and in particular, paying attention to the moment that a sound passes away from awareness, passes out of awareness. You might notice long droning sounds, maybe traffic, and then a car drives away and it gets quieter and quieter, and then poof, it's gone. You might notice sudden sounds. Someone slams a door, quickly arises, and then quickly passes. So we're really getting a heightened awareness of the subtle dynamics of sound here. And we're noticing that key insight that all things come to an end. Or as the Bible puts it, all things must pass. All things must come to pass. Everything must go. And it's okay if you don't happen to notice anything vanishing in this moment. Part of the practice is just maintaining that cat-like readiness for any new sound to arise and pass. That's perfectly fine. Or maybe there's so much sound around you that it's hard to keep track, in which case you might try using a label and absolving yourself of the need to label every single vanishing, but just picking whatever happens to be an awareness and labeling it. You can use a word like end or passing or gone. And so that whenever you hear a sound vanish, you can say to yourself, gone, as a sort of anchor to keep you with that present moment awareness as sounds come and ultimately go. If this feels murky, foggy, jumbled, you can't seem to find any traction with it, that's perfectly fine. It's part of the process. I might encourage you to let go of the focus on endings and just see if you can stay with sound experience in general in this case. On the other hand, if you feel like you're getting the hang of this, you're getting some momentum with it, take this opportunity to boost your clarity, maybe even reset your posture if that's helpful. To take this next few moments to pay very heightened attention to sound experience. So, for example, earlier I talked about how me talking would eventually come to an abrupt end. But with a heightened sense of clarity, you might notice there are subtle little endings between all of the syllables that I'm saying right now. That even this process of listening to my voice is full of little gones, little endings. After each word, after each syllable, there are these little moments of silence. So see if you can boost that clarity with all the sounds in the world around you, noticing again all the abrupt endings, the abrupt passings that seem to constitute all experience. If you have decided to try labeling your experience, your inner voice might sound a little something like this: gone, gone, gone. So that was me noticing a car driving by, and there was a little creak in my building. And I also noticed the sound of my own breath ending on the exhale. And if you do want to label out loud, sometimes that can be helpful, especially if you're alone and aren't going to feel embarrassed. Sometimes that can be really helpful to help you keep track. Again, the labels are just an anchor to help you maintain your awareness with sound, and in particular with moments where sound is ending abruptly. Remember to be gentle with yourself. If this practice is feeling difficult, or if you're feeling uncomfortable, anything's not working the way you want it to work, just see if you can drop any self criticism, any resistance, noticing what seems to be tying you up in knots, and seeing if you can just loosen that knot, even if it's only 1%, letting this practice unfold as it may. If you're paying close attention, two things you might notice as you do this. One thing you might notice is that sometimes things partially vanish. So, for example, there might be a sound in your environment and the sound continues, but maybe the high frequencies vanish all of a sudden, or it changes shape, or it changes position. So, that's also something you can notice as a vanishing, if you'd like, if that's useful to you. The other thing you might notice is that something remains just after a sound vanishes. And let me rephrase that. Nothing remains, but that nothing is something that you can actually notice: the silence, the nothingness, the void that's left by a sound that vanishes. So often in life, we're wired to constantly notice new things as they arise, whether it's a new person walking in the room, or a new sound in your environment, or a new notification dinging on your phone. But what we're doing here is the opposite. We're noticing all those moments where things vanish. And in particular, you might also notice that silence, that emptiness that seems to follow the moment of vanishing. If that all seems a little abstract, just forget I said it and keep going. But if that's something you are noticing, just know that that's all part of this practice. invite this emphasis on disappearance to allow you to appreciate everything that does appear. Notice how this technique has the potential to heighten your awareness of whatever's happening in your sound environment. And if that's not happening for you, that's perfectly fine as well. Stay with it. Sometimes the days are sunny, sometimes they're stormy, but they're all working towards training the skill of awareness in the long term. Now, you can let go of that effort for this last minute. I'll invite you to maintain your posture, but to drop any energy that you're putting into paying attention in any particular way and just do nothing at all. Let yourself integrate and consolidate and release whatever may have happened in the past 20 minutes. For these last few moments, take a moment to reflect on the practice that we just did and to see what comes to mind when I invite you to capture your experience in a phrase or a sentence or a few words. Just notice, don't put too much effort into this, but notice what words come to mind as I invite you to reflect on what these 20 minutes were like for you. And whenever you're ready, you can start to transition out of the practice. Open your eyes if they were closed. Give yourself a stretch, have a sip of water, no rush. And I'll invite you, if you're up for it, to share your phrase or your words in the chat, just so that we can all maintain this collective space and get a sense of the similarities and the difference and the diversity of experiences that we all had together over these 20 minutes. And as you share in the chat, I'll say that it might have been obvious to you or might not be obvious to you that, focusing on change is ultimately what we are doing in this practice. And in particular, we're noticing that moment of disappearance. And there's this kind of allegory here that in the laboratory of our own experience, we're noticing things about vanishing. And that noticing tends to be useful as we think about the larger scope of things vanishing in our lives. For example, this being the last live meditation session that we're doing for a while on this YouTube channel, or other things that might be vanishing in your life, things that might be ending, transitions that might be happening, that there's kind of something interesting about noticing, for example, how paying attention to that vanishing brings a different quality of attention to the things we do notice, right? Also noticing what happens in the space after something vanishes, et cetera, et cetera. And as some of you might surmise, this can go pretty deep And it's a scary, sometimes, topic in our society to talk about, but there is some relevance to the idea of death, to the idea of our own death and the death of people we care about and death of strangers in the world. And, this idea that everything must come to an end. That this is something that we can practice in our moment-to-moment experience. We can notice these little deaths of sound. We can explore these questions if they feel safe for us. And if not, to back off and be gentle with ourselves. Maybe we're not ready for that. Maybe it's not the right way for us. So hope that was useful. I'm looking at the chat here. I'm seeing Jess is working with posture. Oh yeah, it's a big one. It's a long journey, especially as we age. Gauri is finding this interesting and simple. Yeah, there is something. When I first learned this practice, I also felt that way. That there's a kind of simplicity to this particular practice that's very powerful. Paula needed this. Good to see your name, Paula. I'm glad you enjoyed. Jose got more clarity and a sense of calm as he brought his attention back to the end of sounds. Wonderful. And David is feeling tired. Oh, hits me in the gut. And there's a lot to be tired about. I hope you are able to get some rest, David. I hope all of you are able to find balance. Even if things are not going so well, that you can at least find some balance. And if things are going well, to enjoy that. I'm always available. If you look me up online, it's not that hard to find me. I will be a part of the Masterclass Founders Edition starting October 13th. I think I'll be guiding an insight practice there, but Richie and Court, the creators of the framework, are going to be leading that program. And it's, I've seen some of the plans for it. It's sure to be a fantastic session. Otherwise, yeah, please stay in touch, keep that practice going. And remember, sometimes these practices are really, really difficult to do. And sometimes they feel like a breeze, but that's all part of the process. From my own life experience, having done these practices for a while, you can kind of think of it like, as a different theory about what it means to be happy. And you can think of a metaphor as like climbing a mountain. Like if you try to climb a mountain, it's not always going to feel enjoyable, right? You're going to be like cold and exhausted. But then there's that moment where you find yourself on a precipice on the side of the mountain, or maybe even at the top of the mountain, where it all felt like it was worth it. And you feel a little bit more fulfilled and happy than you would have if you never climbed the mountain. And as you start to climb more mountains, that starts to bleed into the whole process of climbing a mountain, that you start to enjoy the sweat and enjoy the cold. It's part of the adventure. And that's kind of like the relationship between these well-being practices and these skills that we talk about in the Healthy Minds framework and life in general, that the practices themselves can be a little challenging, but we also can get these moments where we get a beautiful vista and we realize that it's kind of worth it and we feel accomplished. And that the more we do that in our lives, the more we realize that the challenges that we face in our life are opportunities to learn and to grow. And we start to even enjoy, in a weird way, the challenges that we face. And there really is some power to that. And, we've talked a lot about the science. We've talked a lot about the different ways, and there's so many different frameworks. But in the end, all I can really tell you is from my own experience that it has really dramatically changed the way I approach life. And I can honestly say that when things get tough, that I'm able to maintain a sense of balance and even a sense of kind of fulfillment and happiness, even through the challenges. Now, do some challenges knock me off that balance? Absolutely, but it's all kind of part of the process. So I wish you luck. Please stay in touch. Please take care. And I just want to, at this point, offer my gratitude to all of you for being a part of these sessions and everyone who's been a part of the sessions over the past year and a half. And also to Healthy Minds Innovations and the Center for Healthy Minds for creating this framework, for creating the science around this practice, the language around it, and also these opportunities for us to connect together. So take care, be well, and best of luck in the future.